Happy Friday. Today on the news and why it matters, text messages have been released between State Department officials, Ukrainian aid. It all looks kind of bad. We are going to dig into it, tell you what you need to know. Don't change the channel. It starts right now. Welcome to the news and why it matters. I am Sara Gonzalez, today joined by Stu Bergier.
No quid pro quo. I'm sure I got that out there.
I was just introducing you.
Okay, sure, because I'm a little nervous. I say that, I start every conversation now with that.
With no
quid pro quo.
Pat Gray from Pat Gray Unleashed.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. You look really excited to be here today.
I am.
Are you?
Yes.
Okay, I can tell. It's written all over your face. And
It's
Jason,
convincing in some of those text messages.
Jason Howerton. So you guys, how tired are you today?
Pretty tired. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't get home till like 1 a.m. And then
What? What were you doing after the show didn't end?
late. Look, my job doesn't
partying?
doesn't
He's going out
end when the
partying.
show ends is the problem.
But
I got
socials to do.
Yeah, I got out of here at about midnight.
that's true.
But I'm good. I'm good.
Good. Well, it was a huge special. If you missed it, you got to go back to Glenn Beck's Facebook, the Blaze TV's YouTube channel. It's all up there. It's also on the Blaze app for those of you who are subscribers. It was the Ukraine scandal explained. Even if you did watch it, might do you some good to go back and watch that chalkboard again, because my brain doesn't. It's hard. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in. So you can go back and rewatch it. And that promo code is still active, still available. It is GB20OFF if you want to save $20 right now to become a Blaze subscriber. Got a lot to get into. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Relief Factor. Relief Factor is for those of us who, I don't know, maybe just you're getting a little bit older and things start to hurt. Your joints don't work anymore. Your muscles, you sprain and do bad things, pull by doing really, really hard tasks like getting out of bed.
It's very difficult.
Walking around your kitchen. Maybe, I mean, these things get very, very hard when you get older. Relief Factor is there to help you if you're walking around in constant pain. It doesn't have to be that way. Relief Factor is 100% drug-free. It targets the inflammation in your body. We've had so many listeners and viewers reach out to us and say, okay, we didn't listen to you guys at first, but we finally tried it. And it's life-changing. It's life-changing when you can get out of pain. So if you are one of the many Americans who are living in pain, try Relief Factor. Do yourself a favor. Get the 3-week Quick Start Pack. It is $19.95, and the majority of people who try it, they go on to keep ordering more and more and more because it's changed their life. You don't want to miss out on that. Go to relieffactor.com, or you can call 800-500-8384. I was looking all over mainstream media, CNN, MSNBC. Everyone in the mainstream media has gotten a hold of these texts that have leaked, of course, from this Ukraine investigation into Donald Trump. And they are all saying this is it. This very clearly shows that President Trump did, in fact, withhold aid in exchange for an investigation into a political opponent. Stu, I know you went over some of the text messages today on the radio program.
There's so much here. First of all, before you make your judgment, you want to get both sides, right? Like the Republicans have not really had a chance to respond yet. They say they want to get this full testimony out, and that's going to explain it. Maybe it does. Who knows? We'll see that kind of as it happens. As we were getting the special ready last night, there was multiple. We're in the middle of telling one side of this Ukraine story that has not been covered by the media. While we're prepping, there was a New York Times, CNN, Wall Street Journal reports all trying to debunk the Ukraine story, all released within an hour or two of the special, which is remarkable.
That's weird.
And then this thing comes out overnight with these text messages. It's hard. It's a very complicated story. But this in particular, these texts in particular, tell a story of, if you want to say, I think there's a very big incompetence part of this. And I think you can look at this and say, I don't understand exactly what either side is really doing here. The Trump administration is trying to say, they came out and they kind of set the standard for this. They said, okay, look, yes, we made this call, but no quid pro quo. And that didn't happen. That didn't happen. And then you read the text and it's like, well, they go every piece of the way up to the line of saying, we're going to withhold this money for these meetings. One of the funniest things I think that keeps coming out of this is that Trump could have been caught in collusion multiple times. He just seems to be terrible at it. Like, he can never get the ball across the end zone line. Like, this happened with the meeting at Trump Tower. We were going to get dirt, but they never got the dirt. Like, this happened, they were going to build the tower in Moscow, but they never got the tower in Moscow. There's always this excuse that, like, they didn't actually finish it, which just seems to be the case here again. They seemingly pressured the Ukrainian government to say, well, we'll take meetings with you. You can have your funding if you do this investigation. But they never did the investigation.
Wait a minute, though, because it says, quote.
And they gave the funding.
I'm reading the quote. It
Yes.
says, to be clear, no quid pro quos of any kind.
Yeah.
That's a quote.
I know, it is.
So how could you say?
I know.
Well,
And
let's go through that particular interaction.
that exchange is
Perfect.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Because, look, quid pro quo, you don't actually have to say the words, we are having a quid pro quo.
That's not something you say in
No.
everyday conversations.
And that is
too.
legitimately seeming to be their initial defense here, which is like, no, he said no quid pro quo. Look at this exchange. This is hilarious to me for so many reasons. Bill Taylor, who's one of the U.S. diplomats, he was, I believe, the interim U.S. diplomat going to Ukraine. He said, as I said on the phone, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign. Then Sondland, another diplomat, says, Bill, I believe you are incorrect about President Trump's intentions. The president has been crystal clear, no quid pro quos of any kind. The president is trying to evaluate whether Ukraine is truly going to adopt the transparency and reforms that President Zelensky promised during his campaign, and I suggest we stop the back and forth by text. If you still have concerns, I recommend you give Lisa Kenna or S, whoever that is, a call to discuss them directly. Thanks. So the breakdown of this is fantastic. First, the Bill Taylor sentence. Can we see this again? Because it's important to see exactly what they're trying to do here. Bill Taylor, as I said on the phone, why would you text someone and say, I'm recalling what we just had in this conversation? You're trying to make it clear that you've brought this up multiple times.
You're trying to document.
Right, exactly. You're documenting it. I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with a political campaign. If you are a person who's fighting on Trump's behalf and are trying to execute this mission that he's trying to do, which would be, in this case, potentially holding back security for this, a quid pro quo, you certainly don't say, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance, saying the exact problematic thing for help with a political campaign. Now, again, the Trump defense here is that it's not a political campaign, it's about corruption. He actually puts it in the text. No person who isn't trying to cover his own ass and hurt Trump is going to text that message. He's a diplomat. He understands how these things work. You say those things on the phone if you're going to say them. Like, you're going to hide it, right? Taylor clearly here is trying to get a text on the message saying, I wasn't part of this. These guys were, and this is what they wanted me to do, and it was for political motivation. On the other hand, Gordon Sondland's response is completely ridiculous. And notice the time code here. About 4.5 hours go by before he replies to this text, and he replies with something like a boilerplate PR comment about what the thing is about.
It's almost as if he knew that this would end up in a congressional hearing.
Exactly.
And
it was reported that in between these two texts, he met with Trump. So Sondland meets with Trump and comes back with this statement, which is, I swear there's been no quid pro quos. You're misunderstanding what the president wants here. He wants the best for all of us. Then he says, oh, well, I suggest we stop it back and forth by text. Again, if you actually don't want to hurt the president, we can't be talking about this here. All of this comes to me down to something I've already priced in to all government activities, which is they're massively corrupt. I mean, think about what you're looking at here. These are two people who are supposedly in the middle of important international affairs, and neither one of them is having a conversation. They're both just messaging each other to get themselves on record to protect either themselves or their boss. This is why nothing ever gets done in the government. Is why it's so terrible. Do I believe that this went on with Trump? Do I think that he, was trading texts and trying to put pressure on the Ukrainians to get something that might have benefited the United States of America, but also benefited himself politically? Sure, I do. Do I believe the side is the exact same thing that goes on with Democrats? Yes. And I mean, it's a problem, but it's not something we're naive that occurs, right?
Well, and I do want to play a couple different clips from Republican lawmakers who were in the testimony that U.S. Ambassador Volker was testifying all day. They listened to it. But before I do that, Pat, I'm having trouble because CNN, Democrats in the House and the Senate are all saying this is what is the smoking gun needed to impeach Trump. But my question would be, if that's your standard, should we not also call for Joe Biden to drop out of the race? Because what they're accusing Trump of doing, Joe Biden is on tape saying he threatened to withhold aid unless they did what he asked them to do in Ukraine. So shouldn't we be calling for both of those things if we're being objective here?
Yes, but nobody's being objective here. So that's kind of the
me.
problem. And I think that maybe the Trump defense switches from this wasn't about the campaign. It was about America's national interest. Because if they didn't do quid pro quo, it looks like they did do tit for tat.
So totally different.
Yeah, it's a completely different thing because it's not Latin.
No.
That's not Latin at all.
Wait, tit
that's
for
almost
tat
like baby talk.
Oh, okay.
Tit for tat is like baby talk. Quid pro quo, that's something very sophisticated.
Much more legal sounding.
Yes.
Well, and to Pat's point, Jason, President Trump tweeted out this morning, as president, I have an obligation to end corruption, even if that means requesting the help of a foreign country or countries. It is done all the time. This has nothing to do with politics or a political campaign against the Bidens. This does have to do with their corruption. Is that a solid enough excuse there, Jason?
I mean, if there's one thing I know about Trump, and I criticize him for stuff, I like him for stuff, but there's one thing I know, it's that corruption and honesty are the top echelon of his priorities. So obviously, I believe, no, look, he's posturing. I still think, as bad as that text, unless there is something more, I still think he's covered legally. So to me, I see this more as him. He's going to use this again. I keep going back to this to paint himself as the victim. And I think as of right now, unless there is something more, he still has that good case. Yeah. So for him politically, I think it will work with his supporters. But to people who are looking at it objectively, it's like it's almost to the point of like, are we still pretending that we are where we are right now?
Yeah. So, well, really quickly, I want to go ahead and throw in Representative Jim Jordan. He, of course, was one of the lawmakers who actually sat there and listened to the testimony that came in addition to these text messages, right? So we're talking about more context of the conversations that took place. He seemed very sure and adamant that it was not what these text messages make it look like. Watch.
I hope every American gets a chance to read what took place in that room today, because when they do, they will see there is no quid pro quo. They will see exactly what President Trump and President Zelensky was going on between these two countries, and they'll see what a good ambassador, what a good diplomat Kurt Volker was, Ambassador Volker, and the people who worked with him, and how they were looking out for the best interest of this country and, frankly, for the best interest of Ukraine. That's what will come through. So I hope at some point every single American gets to read what took place in that room today.
Do you know what my problem is? You know what my real problem is? I don't believe any of them. That's the problem. And I like Jim Jordan, but I feel like we get so blinded by politics, it's hard to believe anyone because they're all so hyper-focused on saving their side. And so even if they believe it to be true, it's hard to believe it.
Okay, but do you say the same thing about Dan Crenshaw? Because Dan Crenshaw basically tweeted out a very similar statement, if we could pull that up. He said, one key fact about yesterday's closed-door witness interview, Republicans are the ones calling for public release of the deposition transcript. That should tell you something. Democrats prefer narratives, not facts. Come on, can I at least trust Dan? Tell me I can trust Dan.
I'll wait till the next time it's the Democrats calling for the public transcript to be released and the Republicans are saying the exact opposite. Like, this is going to happen. Look, this is the best part about this, though, and we say this all the time. This information will come out, and we can make a determination. I mean, again, we're guessing at this point at some level. You know, like I think what you're going to find, if I had to guess, is that what they're going to do is take this Bill Taylor, and he's going to be shown to have an anti-Trump bias. So he does not like Trump. He's going to be one of these guys. He's going to be the new James Comey, right? The new Robert Mueller. He's going to be the new Lisa Page and Bruce Orr. Another one of these figures that takes a little bit of this into the package. And you don't send things like that if you're trying to protect your president. You're sending it the other way. So I think we'll have a divide just like we always do. We'll all read the documents and try to make the best determination possible. But the best thing about this is we actually have a chance to do that eventually, at least we hope. And there's no reason to have to judge it yet. If they're going to go into this
pretty
point,
radical to want to wait for like evidence and testimony and whatnot.
crazy.
What a buzzkill over here. Back in a minute.
How are we gonna talk about it?
That's why we have beer on Fridays. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez held a town hall in Queens last night. There was at least one protester. Now, I want to get into who exactly this protester is because she has been identified. But I think it's important to note the types of things being said about climate change, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's reaction to these things. Let's watch first.
We're going to be here for much long because of the climate crisis. We only have a few months left. I love that you support the Green Deal, but it's not getting rid of fossil fuel. It's not going to solve the problem fast enough. A Swedish professor saying, we can eat dead people, but that's not fast enough. So I think your next campaign slogan has to be this: we got to start eating babies. We don't have enough time. There's too much CO2. All of you, you're a pollutant. Too much CO2. We have to start now, please. You are so great. I'm so happy that you're really supporting the Green Deal, but it's not enough. Even if we would bomb Russia, we still have too many people, too much pollution. So we have to get rid of the babies. That's a big problem. Just stopping having babies is not enough. We need to eat the babies. And this is very serious. Please give a response.
Brilliant.
Oh, it did. Loved out Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Which is the best part is her reaction because she doesn't even know that it's not real.
Right. So here's the thing with this. Now, I just want to say for the record, when I watched this last night and I watched her pull off the coat, I said, okay, this is staged.
Yeah, yes.
It was right at the
There's a performance level. It's a good performance.
It's a
really
really good
sell.
However, because of the way the hysteria, there is a chance that that's
Bingo.
real.
100%.
I mean,
Bingo.
I had it at about a 20% chance it was real today because, that looks like a radio bit or a YouTube bit or, it turns out Lyndon LaRouche pro-Trump bit. Wow, is this a weird world?
Really weird.
But there's a chance. I mean, they've been spewing this 12-year, 11 years to cannibalism thing for a long time.
I mean, eating the baby seems like the next logical step to the climate change hysteria.
Well, I mean, how far is it away from their actual position? Their
Not
actual
very far.
position is we need to have abortions available for everyone, so the baby dies, and they'll go to be the very nicest treatment on it. They'll just talk about protection, sexual protection, so that you're not producing in other countries. The bottom line is
They're
less
also talking
people
cannibalism.
I mean, what's his face? Ted Turner did talk about that. But I mean, it's not having the eating is something we can all look at and laugh at, but the bottom line is the same amount of children are dead in both scenarios. It's not necessarily a positive way.
How long before, in all seriousness, before, or how many climate activists now would endorse a China type of one-child policy? You know what I mean?
They'd be all over that
So,
for real.
it's really, I mean, it's to the extreme,
Yes.
but there are some real extremes right now on the climate change side.
And that's why it's a good bit, right?
Yeah,
It
it's a
isn't
great bit.
that. I mean, look, that's a great performance. You've seen
Yeah, it
these
was.
YouTube people before. I can't believe Lyndon LaRouche is
respect
turning
it.
out people who can perform like that. It's actually a really solid job. You could see it coming, right? She's getting ready to release the shirt. She says,
Well, and the giant barrette too. I was like, no one wears barrettes like that.
that's where you go?
It really was.
Eating children. You're
Well,
I saw the barrette and I knew right away.
Well, I was right.
Yeah, you were right.
Okay.
You were right.
She also paid a little too much attention to her T-shirt.
Yes.
She kept drawing attention to that.
Showing her,
And taking off her coat, there was no reason to do that right in the middle of her speech.
Right at the climax of what she was saying.
And you know, she builds to it. She says like, "This should be your next campaign slogan." When obviously any rational person would realize that's not a good campaign slogan.
Eat the babies 2020.
Yeah,
I like it.
And also, like, she brings up a couple of supporting stories, which, if you're like, the fact that the Swedish doctor called for eating dead people, the fact that if we just bomb Russia, like, she's got an agenda there. A person with the eat the babies agenda does not want to bomb Russia. Those two people don't. But it doesn't matter. It's still fantastic. And you're right. Her response is really revealing. She comes out and she just says like, well, look, we have a little bit longer than a few months, but you're right on blah blah blah.
I like how she never says we shouldn't eat the babies.
She never says that. And her backup, her
She doesn't want to hurt her feelings.
I know. The squad is in constant backtrack, right? Like whatever they say, they always go on Twitter and then try to explain later on. And Ocasio-Cortez's explanation for this was, I thought she was mentally disturbed. We shouldn't be mocking her. I didn't want to upset her. It's obviously nonsense, and she's a liar. But as a stunt. I mean, Pat, you're a connoisseur of these things. You did this for many years with Glenn, and you guys did all sorts of crazy stuff. That's a good, solid
It's really good. It's really good.
Why didn't we think of that?
I know.
It was a little bit controversial, though, on the internet. I will say, Jason, I did see some people who are not fans of AOC who were like, you guys really, does she really have to come out and say she's not in favor of eating babies? Is that something that she did? Are we at a place where we have to come out and say?
I would respect her a lot if she was like, I want to do a lot, but eating babies, let's chill.
Yeah.
Let's chill. I would have been like, good job.
Yeah.
Well done.
I think
but some people are also really extreme and have created mock DNC ads. This one guy at Jason_Howerton on Twitter did this, and it's pathetic that they would do that and make fun of the Democrats like that. So
I didn't see it. I haven't blocked.
Speaking of AOC, I just did a parody of her that is on my YouTube.
How is there not a parody of this situation going to happen?
Well, it came out and I got so many messages and they were like, so when is your video of AOC eating babies? And I was like,
no.
What are you doing to me, girl? I just did a video. But it is interesting because I had a lot of people, way more than I expected, commenting on the video as if I was really her. And I didn't know whether to be insulted or
I don't think so.
Is it a compliment? Should I be flattered that I did such a good job they thought I was her? Because, I mean, I know we both have dark features, but, do I really look that much like her?
I mean, there are some similarities. There's a reason why you picked her to impersonate, right? I mean,
it's because we're both Hispanic.
Okay, there you go. I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, if they were like, hey, you look like John Goodman, then I'd be
offensive.
That's offensive. I don't think AOC's problem is not her looks.
No.
I mean, she looks fine. She's just dumb.
I appreciate that perspective, Stu. That makes me feel better. All right, back in a minute. I mean, truly, though, and they were saying they're rude. Those of you out there who might be watching on the YouTube live stream or the Facebook live stream that we do every day, don't forget, we also have this as an audio podcast. You may be thinking to yourself, well, I don't want to listen to it on audio. I just want to see all of y'all's beautiful faces, which we can't blame you for. But we need you to go subscribe to The News and Why It Matters on iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts, and also rate it. Now, you got to rate it 5 stars, though, because obviously we're worth 5+ stars. Don't you? I mean, you guys agree, right?
I mean, I went with 2 stars. I thought, it show's okay sometimes. That was my rating on it. But
well, when you're on it, 2 stars.
Yeah.
When you're not on it,
I'm
5 stars.
all the time, yeah.
So make sure to do that. Stu actually said whoever goes in and gives us a good rating, he'll show up at their house. Mm-hmm. He'll cook them dinner.
Yep.
Just in an apron, though, no clothes. That's what you said, right?
Why would you add that?